Welcome. My name is Abe Kasbo, and today we're with Dr. Andrea Simon, a corporate anthropologist and president of Simon Associates, where she helps companies go through change. Andy, welcome. So let's talk a little bit about, is this culture change or is this a fad? What's really happening in the marketplace?
Abe, this is a wonderful question, and we get it so often because the trends that seem to emerge and surge and purge so quickly are really confusing to people, particularly in business. What we aren't clear yet about is what's going on with this new generation that's developed. So let me spend a little time talking about the net generation, the 11 to 30-year-olds who are really now emerging into new roles in our society and truly changing the way we do things. For them, there isn't old media and new media. The new media is like refrigerators. It's just the media. So let me give you some illustrations about how this is more than a fad or a trend of the moment. It's not a Facebook or a MySpace. What we're seeing is something really transformational, and for business, whether it's in their employees or their customers or the way they run their organizations, there's a bit of culture shock coming, and we need to pay attention to it. So some things that we should think about. First of all, you may go onto the internet to buy something. The net geners go on to collaborate and create stuff. You may wake up in the morning and read your newspaper. They have RSS feeds all day long to find out what's happening. We've interviewed people that read 50 blogs a week. And I don't know whether you read 50 blogs or write 50 blogs a week, but clearly blogs aren't an afterthought. It's where things are happening. In some ways, we look at the internet as a place to occasionally go on and watch a video. They use YouTube as a way of life. While we think email is a way to communicate, they IM and text all the time. Just talk to any parent of a youngster, and it is a constant multitasking that's going on. TV is the background music. Use the music, where they are videoing, they're IMing, they're playing a game, and music and TV is going on in the background. So the advertising that used to be on TV no longer has any of the power that it used to. So now, what does this all mean? And you must be seeing this very often in businesses as well.
Right. You know, people think about the web as a website. You know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people went on the web and they staked their claim as this is my domain, this is my website. But the web is really about the ability to do multiple things, including distribute and control their message.
Yes.
So the web is about content distribution and providing their customers, their markets, their employees a way to proselytize for them. So done right, the brand distribution becomes the goal, but the internet, as we're defining it in terms of content distribution, becomes the tool to do it.
That's right. Now, if you think about this as culture, you know, as an anthropologist, we used to look at culture as something that created stability. Humans don't like chaos, and what we now see is constant change. So if things don't happen, they are completely being created and changed almost as we think. Think of Twitter, that emerged from 0 to 60 in a year and is becoming a dominant way for people to build communities and communicate. For a business, though, they need to look at three things in a very important way. The new employee is very different than the ones that they are. And so new lawyers coming in are questioning billable hours versus value billing. In hospitals, young doctors are changing the whole way of medicine, and in many cases are challenging what the boomers and the Gen Xers used to do, and they often need translators to communicate with each other. In education, and I was a professor at Washington University in St. Louis, and we taught entrepreneurship, and this was all about active, engaged learning. Students were teaching, not just listening. And so faculty were wondering, how come there's no independent study when we have team exercises? Well, in business, the same thing is happening. Multitasking during the day for an employee is quite normal. And if in the middle of a video game while you're also doing something for business, it's not an unusual experience. So bosses are having a hard time figuring out how to curate a whole new team for people who act and believe in very different ways. So what we see happening is a cultural transformation. Not casual, not a new fad, but a whole new thing called society, and it isn't just in the US, it's global, and it is going to be transformational, and we need to pay a lot of attention to it and really think about both the consumer, who's now a prosumer, and the employee who multitasks in a very different fashion. And some of the conflicts, while we used to have generational conflicts, I think these are very profound, and they're going to transform the way we see American society in the future.
Andy, let's talk a little bit about some of these industries or sectors that are going to get affected by this change, or that are being affected by this change right now.
Well, some of them are in the news and are quite apparent to us. Healthcare, for example. Whatever the national health plan becomes, we're going to see some great transformation in how it's delivered. There are many issues, from patient safety to the new generation of doctors that are emerging, and we should see some really great transformations there. I think you're going to see it in financial services. The way it was isn't going to be, but it's going to be difficult to figure out how the new is going to happen as well. In pharmaceutical, there's a whole concern about the safety and the risk, and how do we educate doctors in order to minimize the risk and improve patient compliance with drugs that are being introduced for very good reasons. You must be seeing in some of your industries, and we also see it in small businesses that are trying to adapt to a very changing environment that they're in, innovate in new ways, and figure out what non-users and consumers are actually doing. And in some places, there's a whole new co-creating. We see it happening where if this young generation that's going to change our culture creates it, they're creating a lot of new businesses that never existed before. So whether it's a law firm that's completely online or a consulting business that's all of affiliates, we see some great transformations taking place now.
It's interesting, in healthcare in particular, for example, there's a category now called the e-patient. Mm-hmm. And, healthcare itself is the #1 searched for thing in the United States. Mm-hmm. And so how do hospitals and how do, physicians' offices, dentists' offices take advantage of that, by controlling their message? And again, it's not necessarily about the website, because people are searching for information that's going to help their lives. They're not searching for propaganda or brochureware online. Now, we all know that, but we're living in a different space where, this is a YouTube and Twitter and Facebook space. And the beautiful thing about that is the ability to aggregate relevant networks and relevant audiences. So if I'm a hospital or if I'm a surgery center, how do I use those tools to communicate and engage and stay in touch? Because in healthcare, there's no sale on surgery, right? So you're kind of a face in the window until someone needs you.
That's right.
So you need to stay in front of your customers. So healthcare is a good example, I think, of.
But your point is a very important one, because if the next generation consumes information very differently, and content marketing is really the business of communicating, and they really collaborate in developing this, then all of those industries are going to have to change the way they think about talking to customers and prospective customers. Abe, it's really been a pleasure to be on Real Business, and I love the idea of engaging our consumers of our information in how they too are beginning to change as they respond to the next generation that's developing, and address some of these generational issues. In some ways, youngsters are teaching their parents and grandparents about all of this new stuff, and that by itself is transformational. But we hope that businesses will tell us a little bit about how they're doing and how this new generation is influencing what they're doing and how they're going to be marketing in the future.
And so we invite you to engage with us on Real Business by sending us an email, joining our Facebook group, or logging on to our blog. Andy, Simon, thank you so much for being with us.
It's been a pleasure.